Hey guys, this is Cameron Bowen, Tim from Young Justice, and you're listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files.
Recognized, Uncle Walker, D01. Recognized, Emily of Arden, D12.
Hello, team. Thanks for joining us for episode 3 of Whelmed, the Young Justice Files Season 2. Welcome to the cave. My name is Rich, and I'm here with my not-a-sidekick, Emily. As many of you know, Caleb has graduated to the Justice League proper, but though he fears he's left the more dangerous task to us...
We'll manage.
Yeah, I think we got it. If you would like to get in touch with us, you can find us on Twitter at the YJ Files, on Facebook at Crashing the Mode, on our website crashingthemode.com, on Tumblr, theyjfiles.tumblr.com, and at our email address, whelmedpodcast@gmail.com. With that housekeeping out of the way, let's dive in.
I had not believed Nightwing until this moment.
You did not want to believe! None of us wanted to believe this! How could you betray us? You dare question me? After all of you let Tula die!
Calder, that was a mission. Aqua Girl knew the risks. No one wanted
Neptune's beard! Don't coddle this traitor. He has joined forces with our king's greatest enemy.
Do you mean the king who hid from me the true identity of my father? That was my error in judgment, Calderon. No one else needs suffer for it.
And now it's time for...
Hello, Megan.
Hello, Megan.
The title for this week's episode is Alienated. The release date was May 12th, 2012, and the previous episode was just 1 week beforehand. The in-episode date is January 5th through 6th. The director was Mel... The director is Mel Zwyer. That's what we're gonna go with pronouncing it until someone tells us we're wrong. And the writer was Kevin Hops.
As always, Mel, please feel free to come on the show and correct us in person. You have an open invitation. Special guest voice credits in this one is a return of Michael Trucco as Adam Strange again. Trucco. Also, come on the show. And, we also get the late Miguel Ferrer as Vandal Savage and Bibbo Bobowski. And then we get the first appearance of Kevin Graveau. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Kevin Graveau as the mysterious partner of the light. And with all that, man, let's get into our mission briefing.
The pre-credits scene is Karen and Jaime walking into Bibbo's cafe. Bibbo gives them a friendly greeting, but then apparently recognizes them and runs. The two transform into their hero outfits and give chase, but Bibbo is stopped by the real Bibbo who was rescued from the Krolataeans in episode 1. The fake Bibbo opens up, revealing the Krolataean inside. The alien runs into the sewer system and manages to escape out to the bay, where it's picked up by the Manta sub.
Meanwhile, at Star Labs, Adam Strange, McGann, Connor, and Gar return from Rann with the Zeta shields given to them by Sardath. McGann also updates Captain Atom, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern, and the others about what happened in the missing 16 hours. The 6 missing Leaguers were teleported to the planet of Rimbor, where they spent 16 hours rampaging across the planet. Captain Atom then sends McGann to the Hall of Justice.
Back at the Hall of Justice, we get a close look inside. Catherine Colbert is giving a tour of the hall, including the 4 host bodies used by an alien race called the Apalaxians, who attacked Earth, which was the invasion that brought the original League together. McGann and Connor meet Batman in a back room of the hall, where Manhunter has been attempting unsuccessfully to psychically interrogate the Krolataean captured in episode 1. McGann rips the information from the Krolataean's mind, but only Connor understands what she's done.
And us. We understand.
And
I understand.
What did she do? We know.
What did she do?
The Krolataeans have a rendezvous point on Melina Island.
Thank you, Miss Martian. The Manta sub we saw earlier arrives at Melina Island, where we see the Krolataeans working with Black Manta. We also see that it wasn't actually Black Manta who picked up the Krolataeans from Metropolis, but Calderon, who is now apparently working with Black Manta and is revealed to be Manta's son. And
What?
it's like people's hair's cut and nothing is okay. I don't
Nothing
want
is okay.
nothing of this. My
I
wife
wanted to
was
know where Calder
horrified.
was, but not like this.
Thank you, Father. Oh, yeah. Okay, back to the show.
Back to what was actually happening on the show, rather than us watching it. The team and the League work together to infiltrate Molina Island. We get to see the team working side by side with their League counterparts. Superboy and Superman, Batgirl, Robin, Nightwing, and Batman, Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl, and Aquaman and Lagoon Boy. We also see Aqualad communicating with a mysterious partner who has planted a bomb on the island.
Yes. Aquaman manages to unmask quote-unquote Manta, a.k.a. Calderon, during the fight. Though Nightwing apparently told everyone about Aqualad's betrayal, they didn't want to believe it. Aqualad confirms that Manta is his father, and the fact was kept from him by Aqualad. We also learn that Tula, a.k.a. Aquagirl, had joined the team during the 5-year skip, but also died during a mission. Nothing is okay. They also find out about the bomb. Calderon tells them there's a bomb, giving them the, standard villain monologue of me or the bomb.
Aqualad, his Manta minions, the team, and the League all then escape off the island, but the Krolotans weren't apparently told about the bomb. Superman tries to save the Krolotans, offering to fly their ship to safety, but they don't believe him. The bomb explodes, destroying the island and everyone on it. Superman plummets into the ocean unconscious, but is pulled on board the bioship. We then learn that Manta has replaced Ocean Master in the light.
Back at Mount Justice, the 6 Leaguers accused of attacking Rimbor during the 16 Hours, along with Hawkman and Icon, plan to fly to Rimbor to stand trial. Hawkman is going with his wife, which is actually a nice reveal. We kind of know where their relationship is at the moment. And we are told that Icon is familiar with intergalactic trial law. We also learn that Connor has an official Kryptonian name, Connell, which is awesome. Then John Stewart, the John Stewart Green Lantern, creates a starship construct with his power ring and flies them into space. There's a lot of Aster in this one for me. I had a lot of Aster. You got some Aster? Let's talk about some Aster.
Superboy, are you alright?
I'm fine. Feeling the Aster.
Yeah. Do you want to start?
Let's do it. Okay, I'll go first this time. Aqualad takes Superboy down like a pro. I'm not even going to go from step by step.
Yeah, we're just going to jump to that.
Superboy charges at Aqualad. He takes him with an elbow down with a freaking awesome clothesline maneuver, and then grabs him by the throat and freaking electrocutes him. And I'm just like, what? Remember that time when Aqualad got his butt kicked by Superboy? Those days are over. I was so impressed by that whole maneuver. I don't even know what to say. It was awesome. And the Aqualad reveal
it's pretty awesome.
Was amazing. And I watched,
so
I turned to watch my wife's face because I had already, of course, seen the season. And I hadn't seen season 2, actually. We watched season 2 together, I think, or at least part of it. And I turned to look at her when Aqualad got revealed. And she's not, I've said on the show, she's never read comics. She only knows these characters through Batman the Animated Series, like a lot of people did. She was not okay with Aqualad being a bad guy at all. She was like, what's happening? This is where, right about episode 5 or 6, maybe, she just had to take a break. We couldn't binge it anymore. She was so stressed out about what was going on with Aqualad, she couldn't handle it anymore. And I loved it. It's just so good. Absolutely loved it.
Because those first few episodes, I remember those first few episodes, I was like, okay, but where's Aqualad? Okay, but where's Aqualad?
Right.
Okay, but where's Aqualad? And then they just drop it on you. They're like, here's Aqualad. I'm like, no, not like that. That's not what I wanted.
You asked.
No.
There it is.
I wanted Aqualad back, but not like this. So that's just an amazing reveal, and the way all of that is layered in, and how we find out more about that.
The scene where he is you could, if it was not well acted or presented or directed or written or anything else, the scene where he gets revealed as a bad guy could have been really? He's just pissed that Black Manta's his dad, and now he's wanting to be a bad guy. That doesn't make any sense. But his passion in that scene, Carrie Payton's passion in that scene about how angry he genuinely is about Tula and about everything else, like, you palpably feel that. Like,
Yeah.
you almost feel like there's more to this than even we're being revealed, right? And how everybody reacts to it and the whole deal. It's just so well done. I
And
loved
it's so
it, man.
great because it's so different from how we see him in season 1. We never see him angry in season 1. We never see him
Yeah.
upset in season 1, but you can still completely feel how he could get to that point. It's
Yeah.
not one of those things where it's like we're making this calm, cool, collected character emotional because we need to make them emotional. It's like, no, you can see exactly how he would get there. But like
Yeah.
you can see all of the steps that led to calm leader Calderon, who was always so put together among this group of teenagers, to him
Yeah.
just screaming at his friends and electrocuting Superboy. And you can
Yeah.
see exactly how he got there. And it's just amazing. The acting in that scene is just insane.
And it's so, like, the interpersonal relationship that, like, this is a scene that I really wanted to see that I didn't know I really wanted to see. It's like the season finale of season 1. I didn't know I wanted to see Robin and Batman and Superboy and Superman and Martian Manhunter and McGann going to town on each other. But as soon as it started, I was like, oh, yes, please. I want all of this right now. And this was the same thing. We get to see Connor and Clark, right, in this kind of older brother, younger brother dynamic, which makes much more sense, you know, than this I'm your son, I'm a father. You know what I mean? Like, there's a different kind of bonding there. We get to see just all the entire team working together, all of the Bat family in one scene fighting. We get to see Batman's just awesome and brutal, like, close combat fighting style. The choreography of that was great.
There's amazing fight choreography this episode. It's just, there's amazing fight choreography every episode, but this episode in particular, like,
Yeah.
there are entire scenes that are just fighting and no talking, and you're still super engaged. You're like, oh my God, you can do that? That's
Right.
insane.
Exactly, right? We get to see the old return of Maneuver 7. Which is not a fastball special, by the way. And like Greg was very specific about this online, which I think is really, really funny. And people are like, I don't understand. What's the difference? Look, Maneuver 7 is about mobility. It's about getting somebody from point A to point B. A fastball special is throwing Superboy through an enemy. Or the original, which was Colossus picking up Wolverine, who is regenerating and full of adamantium and sharp claws, and having Colossus throw Wolverine through a Sentinel. Like, that's where that first came from. You're not having Nightwing throw Batgirl through a bad guy. You're just helping her get from point A to point B. There it is. That's the definition of Maneuver 7 versus the fastball special. You're welcome.
Maneuver 7 is basically a cheerleading lift,
Yeah.
but cool
Yeah.
and weaponized.
As our maneuvers 1 through 6, they're just all, I don't know, cheerleading maneuvers. I don't even know what they're called. Anyway,
Absolutely.
what do you have? Like, I got a few things more, but what do you have?
I'm going to go back a little bit from before that awesome fight, because that fight is awesome. But that scene with McGann and the interrogation of the alien, which is such a cool scene. I love that Connor goes with her and that he
Yeah.
just tags along. She's like, you don't need to be here. He's like, no, I do.
Oh, I think I do.
I'm here to make sure you don't do anything.
Yeah. And we talked about that last episode with the
Yeah.
crashing the mode about Batman. He's like fully telling her, oh, we would like you to try and help us. I got it. I'm good. You can stop talking now, Batman. I've already done the thing.
Yeah. Which is, because it's like season 1, you're like, she's such a ball of sunshine. And then episode 3 of season 2, she's just like, she just straight up ignores Batman and just does what she needs to do. I'm like, oh, okay, we're here now. But in that scene, I love that her and Connor are still communicating with their mental link, even though they're mad at each other. Everyone just accepts that this is how we talk now.
Right.
There are no words. We just talk to each other through our minds. So that whole scene is great. Scene is so intense, and we talked about it a little bit last week, but such a good scene. Then there's the amazing fight, which we were just talking about, which is So
Yeah.
cool.
I
And
could talk about that
everything with
all day.
that scene and that setup for that fight is great. And the one thing I noticed for like the first time watching through this season was how all of the Krolatanes look different. And I just want to give a shout out to that because that is so insane. Because you see shows like this where it's like there's an alien invasion, all aliens look the same.
Yep.
That's the easiest way to do it. Don't worry about it. And this, I didn't notice until I was paying attention. I'm like, those don't look like the same
Yeah.
model. That's slightly different models, and that is
Very
just
different model. Yeah.
such an attention to detail that I just can't even believe. So just character design and the animation for the show is insane, and I
Yeah.
just wanted to shout out to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else? What into now? Because the fight was awesome. The fight is amazing. Carrie Payton's acting is amazing.
Carrie Payton's acting is amazing. Another thing I want to talk about in this fight, like,
Go for it.
it's actually not about the fight. Like, the biggest takeaway from this fight, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit in the Canary debrief, is that the fight is used to develop character, right? It's not just a big action sequence. Like, you can show different fighting styles and that kind of stuff, but the way that you show character is by putting characters in painful, dramatic situations. And I think people think that it's only going to be in social situations and that combat is just for big explosions. No, fight scenes can show character development. The whole little scene with Wonder Girl, like geeking out and having Wonder Woman saying, like, little less fangirl, little more Wonder Girl. It tells so much about their dynamic, about who this Wonder Girl is, and about their relationship and the fact that she's probably clearly not had these powers her whole life, and she's looked up to Wonder Woman, and like, it tells you everything in 2 simple lines, right? There's so much of this through this whole thing. The scene with just getting into the facility with Lagan and Aquaman. As much as we all have mixed feelings about Lagan, he's clearly fully respectful of Aquaman. Like, you are my king, and I am so happy to be here and help you with this kind of thing. And we see it again later on where he's like, why are we even talking to this traitor? You know, like, he betrayed everything, you know? So these are the scenes with Lagan that make me kind of like him or feel like he has potential when he can stop trying so hard, you know, to fit in. You know what I mean? And you're just laughing because you still don't like him, right?
Oh, poor misguided fish boy. You try so hard. You try so hard, but you will never win my affection.
Oh, no. So sad.
He tries so hard, and I get it, but...
Back to what you were saying about Carrie Payton, too, the passion that comes out of his... The whole, after all of you let Tula die, like, there's such an emphasis he puts on every single word. You know what I mean? Like, that must have been an intense recording session.
Yes. I
Yeah, just unbelievable.
There. That scene and that line is so great, and it's such a gut punch of a line, that whole scene is, but you're like, the whole time you're like, why are you a bad guy now? And that line tells you so much. And
Yeah.
at this point, the video game wasn't out at this point. And the video game goes into all of that.
Right, yeah, according to Neil, yeah.
Yeah. The video game came out after season 2 ended. So we didn't know what happened or how it happened or that was even something that did happen until this line. And it's one line and you're like, oh, and
Oh, no.
it shows you that there are consequences on the show. They show you how the consequences affect individual characters.
Yeah.
Because other shows wouldn't kill off a character, off screen or otherwise. You don't just kill off someone from season 1.
No.
And you don't just kill off
No,
someone from season 1 and have it trigger one of your lead characters becoming a bad guy. You can't do that, but you can, and it works
Yeah.
so well.
And even in this case with like what's going on with just everybody, again, these things don't happen in a vacuum. They've taken the time to establish all of these characters so much that it matters, right? Like, we don't see a lot of Aqualad and Aquaman's relationship. You know, we see a little bit in Downtime and a few other little things, but we get the idea of their mentorship, but we don't get to see much of it. But there's something about that scene where, you know, Aqualad is telling him, you know, my king who didn't tell me, you know, this important thing in my life, and having Aquaman kind of, you know, taking his due with it, you know, like, that was my mistake. No one else needs to suffer for this. Like, you start to feel like they have the more of the behind the scenes with their mentorship and partnership than we got to see before. And speaking of that, like, absolutely. I love how Manta is handled in this series. All the heroes have their own rogues gallery, and a good rogues gallery helps to define the hero, right? But with Aquaman, he's got a pretty broad rogues gallery. It's just not very deep, to excuse the pun. Like, Ocean Master and Black Manta are the two classics, but even to this day, like, Manta's origins are in the wind. Like, there isn't much. There's a few times they've tried to define it, but they haven't really done much with really locking down, who is this guy? Why does he hate Aquaman? Why is a surface dweller underwater trying to take over Atlantis? Why does he care? There's a few different origins that I might get into a little later with maybe an Aquaman episode, but outside of those two, I don't know, of the like scores of antagonists from his comics, there's only a handful that are even, I don't know, any kind of threat or interesting at all. There's King Shark, there's Charybdis, the Deep Six, who are actually apocalyptic villains that are adapted to an aquatic life, which maybe we'll get to see Deep Six a little bit later. That would be kind of cool. Quisp. Unfortunately, Quisp is basically, if you're familiar with Batmite from Batman and Mr. Mxyzptlk, which is from Superman, they're both imps from the fifth dimension, and they come and they do various things. Mxyzptlk messes with Superman. Batmite's trying to help Batman because he's a big fan. Well, Quisp is basically the Aquaman equivalent, I guess, of these fifth dimensional, because everybody needs one of these. It's terrible. And there's Nereus, who's actually appearing in the Aquaman movie along with Manta and Ocean Master. So they're basically taking three of the top Aquaman villains, put them in one movie. That doesn't sound like a good plan, but we'll see. And then finally, the Trench, which are these horrifying creatures from the deep that used to be citizens of Atlantis. So there's a handful of these things, but nobody knows anything really about them unless you really follow the comics. And even then, they're not really that deep. So to have Manta be in here and have him like taking such a prominent role amongst the light makes me really, really happy. And I think he was handled really well. And I hope he continues to be handled well down the line as well.
And speaking of all of them and about the light, how did Ocean Master get kicked out of the light? I really want to know how that happened, because I don't think it's ever addressed in this season, and I don't remember it being addressed in the comics.
Yeah,
so
I don't know.
I kind of really want to know what happened there, because I understand why they did it. I understand like why they did it narratively, because we needed Black Manta to be in the spotlight so we could have this storyline as it unfolds.
Yeah.
But I just kind of want to know if there was like an actual thing that happened, because I'm sure there was, knowing this show. But I just kind of really want to know.
Well, I do know that in the comics, they have a story arc involving Prince Orm trying to take over the throne, which is his classic shtick. And he gets captured, and I have to reread the comics. I'm pretty sure he's outed as being the prince, which means he doesn't have as much use for the light, in the light. Like, the light doesn't have as much use for him because he's not really undercover anymore in Atlantis doing his thing. Now, that doesn't mean they should necessarily kick him out of the light, I suppose. And also, I think that particular comic issue took place pretty early in the 5 years. So they implied that Ocean Master probably was kicked out not too long ago. So I think you're right. There's something else. Something else happened.
Ocean Master, his thing in the comics with the tie-in comics, happens early on in the first season. It happens
interesting.
Like right after Downtime, I think it is, actually. If I'm remembering where it's set correctly, because it's him, because Aqualad, Superboy, and Miss Martian go to Atlantis, and they end up fighting Ocean Master. But I think that was pretty early in season 1. And then
okay.
I feel like he's still Ocean Master for the rest of season 1. So
yeah, I guess
that's
you're
why
right.
I'm curious.
Huh.
I just want to know.
Well, now I want to run a Masks game where we find out what happened. That would be fantastic. One of the other things that I thought was super cool in this was just, we get the tour of the Hall of Justice, and we get the Apalaxian story, which is actually what happened in the comics as well, which is nice. It's always nice when they tie back to the original origins of things. You don't have to do that. It's fine to change those things around, like, the origin of Beast Boy, and Miss Martian obviously is not Beast Boy's origin in the comics. But it's nice when you can nod to it. And in this case, they do that, but they don't just do that. They do a bunch of other stuff too. So I was looking on the YJ Wiki because I couldn't quite place all of these like trophies they had in the Hall of Justice, but they've got Guardian's costume, Firebrand's costume, who was nodded to in the first season, Wildcat, who is a member of the Justice Society, the original Green Lantern, who was Alan Scott. We see pictures of him in the first season. Red Torpedo's costume. We see Flash's costume, the Jay Garrick Flash, and Sandman, who's another character from the Justice Society. There's Amazo's disassembled in the background. There's the Star Diamond from JLA issue 4. There's Kanjar Ro's slave ship, and Kanjar Ro is a villain of Green Lantern. The Green Bell of Uthul, the Silver Wheel of Nyarlathotep, and all of these like mystical things. Libra's scale staff from the JLA issue 111. Like, there's all of this stuff. There's even more stuff. I can't even like read it all. It would be ridiculous that they just put into the background, which gives so many cool nods and makes some of these like adventures from the original comics kind of canon, or some version of them canon, which I thought was super cool.
They are. They're just, all of that's great. And I think one of the last things I want to mention, I love, actually, before I get to that, I just want to say, I love that Miss Martian says, "Hello, Megan," in this episode. I love that they brought that back, because we don't hear that for
Just
the rest
once.
of the season.
Yeah,
It's
just
once. I just needed
It's a
it once.
cute callback, but I'm glad they didn't continue with it.
I know. I understand why they didn't, but I liked that bit of lightness, that she still says it every now and then. It's just not as much because it's 5 years later. So that was just a cute little thing that I liked.
She's a horrifying demigod, but also kind of cute.
She's a horrifying demigod and a ball of sunshine, all at the same time. Sticking by that. But I also really love, at the end of the episode, I love the scene of everyone saying goodbye to their families.
Oh,
I love that Hawkman and Hawkwoman are married, and that they have that little nod to that we get to hear about them, and that he chooses to stay with her instead of just, be easier to have him just stay on Earth. But they're like, no, they're married. He's going with his wife. He's going and supporting his wife through this.
Yeah.
Because you don't often see that with superheroes, and I just thought it was nice. And then I love everybody saying goodbye, and that everybody seems to have such good, healthy relationships with all of their mentors at this point. Because that's so absent from so much teen superhero media, because it's always, we're rebelling against the establishment and everything. And that's fun, and that's fine. But it's really nice and refreshing to see that, like, the whole Bat family cares that Batman's going away, and that McGann loves her uncle, and that they get to hug, and that Superman and Superboy have their great little sibling relationship at this point, and it's just so sweet.
Yeah.
Just getting to see them be a happy little bonded family after all of the angst of season 1 was just so fulfilling. That was great. I loved that.
I agree. Oh, God, what was I going to say? Oh, about Hawkman and Hawkwoman, too. So there's lots of different story arcs. I've talked about their crazy origins, but a lot of times they're not married. Like, for a long period of time in like the 80s, 70s, and 80s, they were married. They were like in a relationship for periods of time, and then Shiera, she got killed and came back as a reincarnated Kendra Saunders. And then there was a whole thing there where Kendra didn't believe or understand this relationship that they were supposed to have through the ages, but, you know, Hawkman remembered it, and it became a drama that way. You saw part of that in Legends of Tomorrow, that DC live action bit that I just thought was not handled well at all. But I hated that Hawkman. And I really like the actress who plays Kendra Saunders, and she was just not well written at all. So to see them here and have it being a very clear, like, mature adult relationship, they're married, you know, their costumes still are just awesome. It was just nice. I'm like jonesing for more information about the Hawks. So to hear that they were married there was kind of cool. And I love the nod to Icon knowing something about intergalactic trial law, because he's actually a lawyer. A space lawyer, so which is kind of pretty awesome. Yeah, so much faster. All right, let's move on to a little Canary debrief.
Stick around. Class is in session.
So this week I want to talk about establishing character. We nodded to this a little bit earlier about this fight scene, which is a spot in which you wouldn't think character is often a fight scene is not a framework in which people often use to develop character, and I think that's unfortunate, because you can put a lot of information in a conflict like that. Jeff Stormer and I spent quite a bit of time talking about Superman, for example. What makes him important, why the idea that you can't tell a good Superman story because he's quote-unquote too powerful is just flat out wrong. It's ridiculous when you think about it. The best Superman stories aren't about whether or not he survives, because all of the heroes survive these stories, with few exceptions. The best stories are about whether or not his morals will survive in a world full of terrible, terrible things. It doesn't take much to establish the heart of a character. Typically, it's how they react to, like I said, a specific stressful situation that you put them in. Writers are terrible people. They create very, very nice characters and then do horrible things to them and then see what happens. We're terrible people. In this episode, for example, everyone tries to escape the island that's going to blow up. But Superman stays behind to try and help the Krolataeans. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that the others are heartless. They just don't have the power to survive a nuclear weapon. But as Jeff said in our conversation, Superman has the power. And because he has that power, he does good. Not because he's forced to do it or because there are consequences if he doesn't do it. He does good because doing good is the right thing to do. It's important to note that your character's actions don't exist in a vacuum. So the actions that Superman take here help show the audience his character, right? He stays, he tries to help the Krolataeans, they don't believe him, they blow up, he's done everything he can possibly do. But that doesn't happen just in a vacuum. It's nice, but it's the reflections from the other heroes on his actions that really hammer those morals and that character home. Quote, he didn't save the Krolataeans, he won't be all right with that, unquote. It seems like a very simple line, but Superboy knows that even though Superman was just hit with a nuke, that won't be the thing that he carries away with him when he wakes up. It will be his absolute failure to save lives. He won't seek vengeance because someone managed to hurt him. He'll carry the burden of those he couldn't save, and he'll push himself to do better. That's a Superman story. That's the best kinds of Superman story. And it's told here in 45 seconds of screen time with a better establishment of who Superman is, the heart of who Superman is in this series and in the comics, and I think in general perception, than some of our live action movies have been able to put across. So we have no doubt who the Superman is or what he will choose to do when lives are on the line. It isn't our successes that define us. It's our failures and how we react to them. It's true for you, it's true for me, it's true for everyone we know, and it's true for developing characters as well. All right, let's dive into some Crash in the Mode.
Tell us something we don't know yet. Sorry, BB. We can't risk altering the time stream. We do that, we're all feeling the mode.
There's a few things.
Get into that. A few things big and a few things small.
Appalachians. Yeah. So we get that. We get an introduction to who the Appalachians are. We saw them in, I think, the first episode. I think we saw them in the first episode. Maybe not. Maybe it was this episode was the first time.
I feel like this was the first time.
And then we're going to get them in the next episode. And they kind of feel like a villain of the week, sort of. But they're used in such a really cool way. And I think we're going to dive a little deeper into it. But there's one line from Superboy in the next episode that you pointed out to me that I didn't catch. Yeah. We'll talk about that in the next episode. Well, we don't want to spoil that here.
No, but we'll get into that.
We'll get into that. But the ability to take the history of these characters and fold them together and then find out how you can use them to push the bigger story forward was really, really cool. We get to see Lagan and Aquaman using the word symbiosis, which, I don't know, it just becomes, I don't know, you talk about this. I think you had put this note in.
I did, because after you watch the whole series, symbiosis means quite a bit in later things when Artemis uses it to help Kaldur kind of remember who he is after his encounter with M'gann destroying his mind. So the fact that they introduced that word so early and so nonchalantly. It's just, this is a word. This is a word Atlanteans use. It means together. The fact that they present that to the viewers just casually, it doesn't matter, it's just in a conversation, and then bring it back later is just so great that it's not, we made up a word out of nowhere. It's like, no, you've heard this word. We've said this word before, and now it has meaning. So that was just a cool little nod rewatching the series and being like, hey, I know what that means. I know what that means later. So that was just nice little subtle foreshadowing. Not even foreshadowing, just subtle introduction
Layering
of an
again.
idea.
I think I talked about it last episode, that layering of the world around you, right?
Yeah.
I love, it took me a few rewatchings, but Aqualad fires a rocket at the whole group of heroes. In retrospect, I think knowing that Superman is going to catch the rocket or whatever, but it puts out a big smoke screen. He gets away. He goes down into this little grotto underneath this place where the bomb is, and Nightwing walks out. And Nightwing doesn't have his weapons out. He doesn't have anything. He just walks out and just says, Aqualad. And Aqualad turns to him and says, you know, just you and me, old friend, like in a confrontational mode. But then Superboy shows up. Right? And I'm realizing later on that what Aqualad was doing was asking him, are we free to talk? Right? Which is so good. So good. But it's all, again, folded in so beautifully in context that there's no way that you would catch that. It doesn't matter. But when you rewatch it again, like, it makes perfect sense that Nightwing would come out and maybe get information from him, because it's a great opportunity to do that, which is fantastic.
And that also makes it make more sense when Calder has his little villain monologue, because you're like, this show doesn't generally do that. Why? Characters don't generally act like that. But Calder is giving them all the information they need to get out safely, but doing it in a way that still presents him as a villain.
Yep, still couches it. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm a bad guy, but I'm telling you everything you need to know so that none of you die. But I'm a bad guy, I promise.
So the thing that you've got, like, this great storyline, right? And we think of everything's working so well together. It's like this well-oiled machine, right? But thinking about it, when you're talking about dialogue like this and body language and all of these things, and you're talking about different writers, if it's the same writer writing a novel and each of these episodes are a chapter in the novel, you have one person's view and vision, one person's through line to get through this whole novel, right? To have this emotional carry through and punch. And here you've got different writers for different episodes and different directors for different episodes and all of this kind of stuff. So to carry through, to be able to walk this thin line of the watcher not wanting to believe Aqualad is a traitor. We don't want to believe he's a traitor. We're going to make the assumption that he's not a traitor and that he's undercover. It's the first thing that pops into your mind, right? But then all these aliens die.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, here's the problem. Even if he is undercover, he just let a bunch of people die. Like, be murdered. However you feel about it, one way or the other, the idea that consequences will happen. Whether he is a traitor or is not a traitor, he's going to have to carry that burden. That's what makes this whole thing. It's like, oh, whether he's a traitor or not is almost irrelevant at this point. It's the psychological trauma afterwards, either way, right? How does he walk away from that? And I'm glad that they addressed that in later episode.
Yeah, with the whole thing of every viewer immediately jumps to, oh, he can't be a bad guy. He's clearly a double agent. It then brings up, like, in season 1 when everyone was like, wait, is Artemis going to be the mole? But it's too obvious if Artemis is the mole.
Right.
And so that level of, we think you're not a traitor, but does the show know that we know that you're not a traitor? And that so many levels of, this show is so smart, they wouldn't go with something that obvious, but you're not sure, is so great. And all of it layers on top of each other to convince you that you're not even sure anymore. At the beginning, you're like, but Aqualad has to be a good guy. But what if he's not? And you're doing too good of a job of convincing me he doesn't have to be, so I can't even trust that I've figured out the twist.
And then even when they do present the information of like when they all show up at the warehouse and, you know, you find out all the things that they've set him up and it's like he's a double agent and blah, blah, blah. But even when they set all that stuff up later on, when he blows up the cave and Wally comes and gets in Dick's face about this whole thing, you're like, yeah, maybe I don't know what's happening.
Is he a triple traitor
again?
We don't even know anymore.
And that's right. It is so good. The partner was interesting to me because you know what I think what happened was my wife binged the first season with me, and then when second season came out, she started watching it with me, but I think I had 6 or 7 episodes of it, and then it was coming out weekly. So when she was asking me like, "Oh, who's this partner guy? Who's that guy supposed to be?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I have a couple of ideas, but none of them are fitting right. I don't know who this partner is because I didn't know anything about Jaime's history and what they'd done with the character in the comics. I didn't read anything with him in it and didn't know that much about it. So it was a pretty big surprise for me as well, even being a comic reader. And Black Beetle was good. He was good. And everything about the Beatles were good. I was super caught off guard about Green as well, and then I went back and was like, oh, that all fell together so nicely. Yeah, really good. And I love, and I think I'm sure I've mentioned this, but Rimbor, again, bringing in that greater universe I was talking about, I think last episode of watching Legion of Superheroes animated series, and one of the characters that actually isn't in that animated series but is a Legion member is Ultra Boy. And so that's his home world, you know, in 1,000 years, that becomes a planet of importance. So, yeah, just amazing. How Greg and Brandon keep all of this information in their heads, or they don't, I guess. They write it down and put cards all over their office walls, apparently. But how they know how to pull from all of that, you know, to make these episodes fold together so well. Oh, so good. Anyway, what else do you got? I need to breathe. I'm too excited.
I think that's it for crashing the mode.
We crashed.
Fan service?
Yeah, I think we can consider this mode crashed. I don't know. I want to say a quick thing. There's a lot of people who say that they didn't care for the second season as much as the first season. I'm not one of those people. Like I enjoyed the first season was amazing. And I think I probably still like it a little better than the second season, maybe. But it's the amount of love I have for both seasons is clearly irrelevant, you know, comparing them. But there's so much good stuff that goes on in this season. It has the heart of stuff that went on in season 1, but the storyline is so different and unique, and it really takes its own story. It becomes its own. It's not trying to ride the back of the previous season. And I really like that. So I'm excited for what's coming. So Emily, you have something for fan service for us this week.
I do. This week for fan service, I have an amazing artist on Tumblr known as Murmurnator. I'm hopefully pronouncing that right.
That looks right.
She has a ton of great YJ art up on her page, but I wanted to focus on one specific art series that she did a little while back, where she reimagined the entire team as teens and young adults in the 1960s, casting characters as civil rights activists, protesters, Vietnam War veterans, and so much more in this amazing art series that she eventually dubbed the Ceasefire AU. And it's just incredible. And I think we're going to put a link to it down in the show notes and everything so you can check it out because I love it.
Yeah, the artwork's really, really good. And it makes me want a story, an alternate universe story that takes place in that. I'm sure there's probably some fan fiction out there maybe that wraps up that kind of thing, but
maybe.
I would love that. And there's also a Justice League Elseworlds story that takes place, I believe, in the 1940s. Yeah, so there's a comic miniseries called Justice League: The New Frontier. They did do an animated movie about it as well. The animated movie is pretty good. It's not bad. They changed the ending a bit, if I remember correctly. But the comic was a lot of fun. And it's set, I believe, in the 1940s, 1950s. So you kind of get the same kind of feel of the artwork style that she's using in this style. It makes me want to have that kind of New Frontier story for Young Justice as well.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I would love to read about all of the ideas she comes up with. Like Miss Martian's a hippie and Connor's a Vietnam War vet and Artemis is a protester. And I'm like, I want to read about all of this.
That would be really cool. And also I'd like to see, like, I always wonder if she has a story, like the artists have a story in their head they're trying to tell, or if they're just doing the art and seeing what story kind of evolves from it. Like, if Artemis is a protester, what is her dad doing? And is her mom still a criminal? Like, and, you know, still in a wheelchair or not? Or, you know, there's a lot of questions to be answered.
Definitely.
But you will find a link in the show notes for Merminator's work. And thank you, Merminator, for supporting Young Justice and bringing us some cool, imaginative work. And I think that's it. I think we can wrap this mission up and head out of the cave. Remember, the best way to support the show is with a 5-star review on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice.
Please continue to hashtag KeepBingingYJ and hashtag BuyYJComics on Comixology. You can also now use hashtag Young Justice Outsiders when talking about Season 3 online. And if you want to help us get more episodes, more Secret Origins, actual play podcasts, and more, please consider supporting us through Patreon. For just a few dollars a month, you can help us do even more with the show while getting some great rewards for yourself. And remember,
stay whelmed, everyone.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our hosts are Rich Howard and Emily Booza. Our editor and producer is Neil Powell. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.